welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Language Teachers Forum. I'm Lee Kerwin from Griffith University and also the President of the Gold Coast branch of the Modern Language Teachers Association of Queensland. So this is a joint meeting, and today I'm really happy to introduce our virtual speaker who's coming from Melbourne this evening, Libby Tuckerman. She's the General Manager of Digital Teaching and Learning at Education Services Australia, and we're really happy to be able to hear from the horse's mouth, as it were, about the ALA program. Thanks very much.
So hi everyone, thank you so much for asking me to present about the Early Learning Languages of Australia trial that ESA conducted last year. We've had fantastic participation in the trial and a lot of consultation. If you see me squinting a bit during this, I am in Melbourne and it's an hour later than it is in Queensland, and at the moment the sun is shining off the Eureka Tower, which you can probably see is creating an incredible effect in the office, which it does at this time, but yeah, so that's the slightly holy light that I seem to be bathed in. That's where it's coming from. Okay, and please feel free to put in any questions you've got. I'll shout them out and we can go to them at the end. So I've got some PowerPoints. I hope it won't be too much death by PowerPoint, and I might actually try something interactive, like holding up the iPad and showing you some of the app at some point in time. Otherwise, it can be a bit theoretical. So, Early Learning Languages Australia, ELA, it was an idea that the government came up with as one of the ways to realise the policy around encouraging a love of language and a way for children to feel confident in their acquisition and their attitudes, I guess, towards language. It's quite innovative in a number of ways, and I want to step through those ways today. Essentially, it's aimed at preschool children, and we developed 7 play-based apps, and these apps were developed in 5 languages, so Arabic, Chinese, French, Indonesian, Japanese. We developed them for Apple and for iOS, and the trial was conducted on iPads. But the apps have also been developed for Android. And in the trial, the educators at the preschools used a range of materials. So there were the apps, but they were integrated into their preschool program. They also had, as educators, a website that they would log into, and on that website they had a whole lot of other support material around each app, the language that was used, the cultural connections, how it could be extended into the preschool program. They had videos, Facebook community, newsletters that went to parents and to the educators, so a whole range of supporting materials. And as it says there, the aim for the children in this program is to recognise sounds and concepts of a language other than English. And as I said, the Australian government is committed to reviving the teaching of languages in Australia, and ELA was a key part of this. The apps introduce the children to keys, words, sentences, phrases, songs, and cultural connections can be made, and I'll show you perhaps some of these on the actual apps. What we had to do and why we had to develop the apps was to ensure that the apps were age appropriate and that provided a degree of immersion within the language, and that probably the ratio of the target language to English, I think we did do a count, and it's close to maybe 85% of the apps are in the target language. And we wanted to use a play-based pedagogy, which is essential to the heart of preschool learning. And the apps are also aligned with the early years learning framework. So a lot of the work that we did was really leveraging the approach to co-learning and collaboration that is at the heart of any preschool program. And it was really interesting working with the educators, having come off working on another project that some of you might know, the language learning space, which was aimed at primary and secondary teachers. Very interesting because most of the preschool educators, some of them might have known another language, but they took it on board often as a co-learning experience with their preschool children. And that created very much a sense, I think, of openness. And often, as you can see in the picture on the right, the children also, they have a fascinating attitude towards digital at this age in terms of they would often cluster around and they would play at activities together and try to guess what language would be required and what the language might mean. So there was a lot of meaning making that would happen collaboratively. And that sort of mind that you see with older children, we really didn't see a lot of that within the trial. So that was interesting too. So just in terms of the actual facts, we delivered the Ella program throughout 2015 to 41 preschool services. They were spread across Australia in regional, remote, urban areas, different demographics in terms of socioeconomic demographics, also in terms of the languages. So the 5 languages were pretty much an even spread. The trial tested the effectiveness of providing preschool children with early exposure, and as I've mentioned, it was conducted in a range of settings. Now, when I say tested the effectiveness, an independent evaluation by Deloitte was conducted throughout last year, and that really was talking to the educators. We didn't do a sort of formal testing of the children's knowledge or anything like that, because that would not have been appropriate at that age, and the aim wasn't to sort of do rote testing of the amount of vocab learned. It was really much more about attitudes, and probably even one of those tests is how many people are interested in being part of the trial. Well, it's actually the first phase of the program this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a while. Now, at the same time that the trial was happening, a consultancy firm called Dandelo were contracted by the Federal Department of Education to look at possible options for implementation. So the government could be guided based on the Deloitte evaluation on how they might implement it. And part of the Dandelo consultation, which was very extensive, formed the sort of recommendations to the department that they will consider. So the outcomes that I put here are actually straight from the Dandelo paper that they prepared. So these were their findings, that in terms of stakeholders, that language experts recognised Ella has value. And the language experts, because that's probably more of your interest who they might be, they really were, the MLTAQ were consulted. Cheryl was talked to both, I think. There was a deep dive workshop with all states and territories, both government and independent. Not every independent, but all government, I think. Yep, all government units were part of this workshop. The MLTAQ, the AFMLTA. There was also interviews with people like Professor John Hayek from Melbourne Uni, Stefan Romanakov, I think his surname is, who is the Community Languages Australia president, Kylie Farmer. So there are a lot of people from the world of language learning who were consulted, who were asked about their views on the program. And pretty much, I would say uniformly, it was a very positive reaction. And the attitude was anything that fosters a confidence with language and a positive attitude, not just amongst children, but amongst parents, is a great thing. early childhood educators were very supportive. They saw something quite different in the way that the apps had been designed and the way that they were integrated with the program. That was very positive. And as I said, the services who participated really enjoyed that experience. This again is from the Dandolo report. And it talks about what outcomes were achieved for the children. And there was definitely awareness raising of linguistic and cultural diversity, and inclusiveness was a big positive. And improved educational performance in other areas that they weren't expecting. So enhanced literacy, probably enhanced digital literacy as well. And outcomes for educators were a lot more confidence around the benefits of language learning and being able to explain that to parents and community, and increased ability to engage and include students from a whole lot of different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. I'll just let you read that quote because there's nothing more annoying than someone reading to the screen. And you can see some of the stills there, and I will remind me to show you the app at the end of this presentation. So the parents, they were very engaged. They were very interested, as all parents are, in what their preschool children are doing. And again, Dandolo reported that via the preschools that the parents had a heightened sense, understood the importance of language learning. I've mentioned the social cohesion and inclusiveness. So in 2016, what is happening with Ella? The program that starts this year extends the trial. So those people who were invited to continue the program, who participated last year, were invited to continue. And out of the 41 services, 40 are continuing. Now, 1,000 new services have been invited to join, and the things that are different from last year is services can choose whichever language they want to deliver, but I don't believe they can swap languages throughout 2016. I think they have to choose a language and stick to it. And the new participants who are joining, it's a BYOD model, bring your own device, but those who are continuing from last year are continuing to use the iPads that were supplied. So the eligibility for this year is that the preschool has to offer a preschool kindergarten program only to children in the year before full-time school and delivered by a qualified early childhood teacher, have an active internet and Wi-Fi connection, and meet all costs associated, and have lodged an expression of interest in 2014 to participate in the Ella trial. Okay, so just to give you, the expressions of interest closed March the 11th, and the Department and ESA are working to support those services who applied, and we'll probably know the actual details of that in a few weeks, how many extra services will be joining the program. And also finally this year, we are going to be developing Educator and Family apps. So because of the really strong interest by parents in the Ella program, they wanted to know, what are my kids doing? How are they learning all this language? Can I use it at home? All those sort of things. So there'll be a family app, and it'll provide background information. It'll have little demos of what their children are doing and information about how to extend the language learning. And the Educator app will basically in some ways replace it. During the trial, we had a liaison officer who visited all of the sites. We had 2 very big face-to-face workshops, and they were fantastic to support those participants and who are really keen in themselves to be advocates for the program. So in a sense, the Educator app, it's not a sustainable model though, obviously, to have a liaison officer all the time, so the Educator app will be able to give services a lot of that information. . So finally, the government will consider the evaluation that Deloitte delivered in February to determine the best approach for providing national availability of the apps to all preschool services in 2017. And that is probably where I'll leave it. What I might do is just ask, now I can see some faces, that's good. I'm off my PowerPoint, so I might just, I might just ask, does anybody want to see the apps? Have a little, for me to show you an activity from the apps. Yes? So if you can still hear me, I just happen to have an iPad here, handy. I'll put up the sound. So in terms of play-based, we wanted to use a lot of activities. This is going to be hard, so apologies if it's not the best resolution. I'll try to make it easier. Plus I have to operate the iPad back to front. So this one's actually called Bake a Cake. And so each app is in a setting that is sort of familiar to the children. So this one is a birthday party. I'll just quickly go back and you can see, you can scroll across and there's little hot spots with activities. I'm so sorry. It's like being in a mirror. This one's in Arabic, and so at the birthday party, they might want to bake a cake. And so they follow a recipe.
Move some ingredients into the bowl. Zubda. Tahis.
I know this ingredient looks a bit ambiguous, but it is a base. Little mix. Put it in the oven. I actually quite like burning my cakes to emulate real life experiences. Put the candles on. Anyway.
Time to go. Making birthday cakes is fun.
Yeah. I think that phrase, which we'll see later, everybody knows the phrase in the language. But look, just in terms, that's probably just a bit of an idea. They're beautiful looking, visually. They're very, and I know it's hard to get an idea just from one, but it's really hard to show it back to front. But they are quite playful, and the sort of experiences that people were reporting were like so many examples I could give you of when children were using language and using phrases and so on, that at times they might have a sibling who was, I know this happened with a Japanese school in Melbourne, and the siblings were studying Japanese and they could just say a few words, and this was early primary, and I think they had a 10-minute lesson a week, and the 4-year-old using the app was phrases. So there was a lot of evidence. It's not, I can't say every lot, but there was a lot of evidence from the educators that the children were, and you know what 4-year-old children are like, they're like sponges. They just soak it up. They're very inquiring minds, and they're not, there's none of that potential lack of confidence about not wanting to try something because they're scared of being embarrassed or anything like that.
So, thank you very much, Libby.
Thanks, Libby.